All right, today we're talking with a guest who clawed his way up from a childhood experiencing abject poverty to founding a business that has been thriving and successful and endured many setbacks along the way and has even worked for some of our most iconic business leaders. His name is TJ Pitre. I'll tell you more at him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everyone, John Corcoran here. I'm the host of the show, and every week we have great leaders, great CEOs, great executives, entrepreneurs. We've had folks from Netflix, Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's. Check out the archives. Lots of great episodes that you can check out there. And before we get into this episode is brought to you by our company, Rise 25. Rise 25, we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you to run your podcast. We are the easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do three things: the strategy, we do the accountability, and full execution of equal importance between the three of those. In fact, we invented what some are calling the Wix of B2B podcasting. It's our platform, Podcast Copilot. You can learn all about this by going to our website. It's rise25.com, or email us at support@rise25.com. All right. And my guest here today is TJ Pitre. He's the founder and CEO of Southleft. It is a front-end application design and development agency. He's got over 20 years of experience in the tech industry. He's really an expert in front-end design and development, which is one that has changed and evolved a lot in that period of time. So we're going to talk all about that. And before that, he actually worked as director of internet front-end development for Martha Stewart Living, which is interesting. So we're going to talk about his background there. Before that, worked for, I think it's pronounced Emeril. I'm saying it wrong?
Emeril.
Emeril,
Celebrity,
the
bam,
celebrity
that
chef
guy.
guy, has written a bunch of books, been on TV, all kinds of stuff. Worked there as well, and so we'll talk about that story as well. And then starting with your upbringing. So, TJ, pleasure to have you here today. And tell me a little bit about what life was like for you as a kid when you were growing up. You didn't have a lot of opportunity, welfare, food stamps. Growing up, your mom didn't have a lot of money, single mom, one brother. What was that like?
Uh, yeah, we'll get right into it. First off, thanks for having me, John. I
Yeah.
appreciate you having me on your podcast. That was rough, as you can imagine. My mom and dad got divorced at I don't even remember. I'm pretty sure I was either a baby or hadn't been born yet. I have a brother who's 2 years older than me. We live with my mom and my grandma, and they were the ones who were responsible for bringing us, for raising us up. Much respect to both of them. My mom worked two jobs, trying to make ends meet. Grocery store, she worked in the bank at a grocery store, and then she managed a concession stand in a high-rise building. And she did that for a while. And I think, like, just growing up, it's one of those things where, like, as a kid, you probably compare yourself to other kids and try to understand, like, why aren't I going on beach vacations, or why aren't we going to Disney World or anything like that while all my friends are? And it's not until you start to grow up to where you start to connect those dots and put things together, and you're like, oh, we're poor. We're not, like, we can't do those things.
Yeah.
And then you start to see, like, patterns, and I said my mom worked two jobs, so she would go do her day job at the concession stand, and then she would come home, change, and then she'd go to the grocery store and then do her banking over there, and then she'd come home, sleep, and then just that was just
Mm.
cyclical every day, all the time. So I rarely got to see her in my childhood. So it was mainly my grandma that raised me and my brother. So I just a wonderful lady. Like everything about her was just like she was a saint in my eyes. Sadly, she passed about 8 years ago, but she was a wonderful woman. Anyway, I think a lot of that, and just kind of gearing towards the entrepreneurial part of the conversation, there was a lot of, like, what not to do situations that I think I learned from, and
What
and
were
I
some
understand.
examples of that?
It's just when, like, as a kid, it's hard to understand, like, financial situations. Like,
Yeah.
I remember like lots of conversations happening about whether or not we're going to make rent. And I didn't really know what
Mm.
that was when I was a kid. Like I didn't really know what rent was. I just knew it was the thing that allowed us to live in the apartment that we were living in. And in the severity of those conversations don't really sink in until you're a little bit older, because then you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I get it. They were trying to like figure out if we have enough money to be able to make this rent. And I remember looking back and saying, I never want to be in a position where I have to ask myself that question. Like,
Hmm.
am I going to be able to provide for my children? Am I going to be able to make rent? Or are we going to continuously have a roof over our heads? Because those like deep, like, those are heavy
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah.
And
My,
it,
what's it, the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchies of
yeah,
needs, like food and shelter, right, are some of the most basic ones.
and it's just I have a great relationship with my mom, and she's doing much better now. Got out of poverty, and now she owns her home. She lives in Picayune, Mississippi. She's widowed, but she's enjoying her retired years, much deserved.
It
But
sounds like your father wasn't in the picture.
no, no,
No.
no. I didn't really get to know my dad until I was probably 26, 27.
Did you
We
reach
have a
back
good.
out?
It was an interesting relationship. He was around every now and then because I guess there was some sort of arrangement with a divorce where there was a little bit of custody where we would be with him, but it was few and far between.
Hmm.
He was he's alcoholic, and like
Hmm.
it was all the things that you can imagine in that situation. So he wasn't around very often in our lives, but but every once in a while he would check in, and he would be kind of one of those dads who would check in with like a gift of something, like, well, I haven't seen you in 2 years, but I brought you whatever.
Yeah.
And as a kid, it was like, that's great, cool. I don't know why I'm not seeing you very often,
Right.
but it's cool that you brought me
Yeah.
this thing. But then that kind of started to drift, and every once in a while we'll get phone calls, but then the average time that we would go without talking was over 2 or 3 years. He
Wow.
ended up moving to New York and lived in Queens for a while. And we didn't grow up with cable. We didn't have cable TV,
Yeah.
and he did. He was living with his girlfriend in Queens, but he would send us VHS tapes of MTV so we could watch Beavis and Butthead, because and I was like,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. Like my dad's, he's extending an olive branch, I guess, of some sort.
Yeah.
But communication was still pretty fragile
Yeah.
throughout all of my teens and early adult years. And it wasn't until like he had several encounters with the law for like 7 or 8 DWIs,
Wow.
and he had an ultimatum. It was like either go to jail or put this breathalyzer thing on your truck in order to start it. And that's when he started coming around.
Mm.
My wife and I, when we were going to college, we lived uptown New Orleans on Camp Street, and they had an empty lot next to the apartment complex that we lived in, it was
Mhm.
just a house that was turned into 3 apartments, and it was just sometimes it would get overgrown with grass, and then this is pretty cool of him. The way that he tried to like rekindle the relationship was he would come over and then just cut that grass. So he would do all that. That was his side gig. That's how he
Mm.
made money. He always did lawn work. So he would come over, and sometimes he wouldn't even contact us. He would just come over, cut the grass, just because he knew he just wanted to be near us, and like,
Mm.
and it's a good business tactic too, because he was just providing value without trying to sell us anything. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until that moment when really like we started to like rekindle a relationship.
Mm.
And like it was 44 now. It took years to shed that
Those
uh,
feelings.
yeah, that animosity,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like, oh, there's like guilt in there. Just like it's
Right.
hard to describe all those things that were packaged
So,
together.
so you mentioned poverty, you mentioned alcoholism, you mentioned kind of like problems with the law. How did you consciously or unconsciously, um, seek to get away from that cycle as you're growing up, as you're getting older?
I sunk myself into hobbies, and my biggest hobby was drawing, illustrating. I Every gift giving occasion, I would always ask for I had it was always sketchbooks, little watercolor
Hmm.
carry kits. I had pencil cases and pen cases that I would keep all my materials in. I had the kneaded erasers that you stretch and pop and put back together. I had a really nice, like I remember a Christmas when I got a really nice drafting table that went like the ones that go up and down, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
came with the stool and everything. And then over time, for like Christmas and birthdays and whatnot, I would get like a lamp that would go over it that I could put over and
Yeah,
like look
yeah,
at my drawings.
yeah.
So I just kept every opportunity that I had to put more into that and like foster that talent or skill or whatever you want to call it. That's where I zoned out. That was my area of focus.
Yeah.
That was
Kind of like an
where
escape for you.
I
So
was going to say that was
yeah,
like that was my escapism. And
yeah.
I remember we had like a Sony Walkman, and I would put those headphones on the padded headphones, with the
Hmm.
little wire at the
Hmm.
top, and I would zone out to like Radiohead or like whatever band I
Hmm.
was listening to back then, and that was that to this moment was like the most that was my flow state, I
Yeah,
guess. Like
I was gonna
now,
say it was your flow state. Yeah,
because I get
yeah,
that now
yeah,
when I'm like
yeah.
coding things, and so
Mm.
it's but that was my first introduction to like
Hmm.
losing yourself in a hobby, and then it's
Right.
like you look up and it's like the world is squiggly, and it's like the
And
colors are more
are some
vibrant.
of these drawings behind you, or did you do those?
No, these are collectors.
Okay.
So this is Mr. Rogers, a
Oh,
framed
cool.
painting. This
Yeah.
is a local artist. My son and I, or my whole family, are Jazz Fest freaks. We go to Jazz Fest every year.
Oh,
Haven't
cool.
missed a Jazz Fest in over decades, but we found this in one of the artist booths. These are mine. Instagram painting. This is a painting of a pizza. So I'm an amateur pizzaiolo, love making pizzas. We can get to that. And this
Uh-huh.
is the one that my son painted. So it's just two
Oh,
margarita
cool.
pizzas.
Oh, cool.
This is a cute little craft down here that it's a painting of like a sky and then a photograph of him blowing bubbles. It's really cute. He made
Oh,
it in one of
cool.
his school.
So I was really into illustration as well. Also had a drafting table. Didn't wasn't raised in poverty like you did, looking back on it now, although I think there's some yeah mental money mindset things that I've had to get past. But yeah, so over here we got a picture here. This is an autographed picture of the genie from Aladdin,
Yeah,
signed by Robin Williams at the bottom. It says,
nice.
"John, if you need me, rub." So my dad was a TV news reporter, and he interviewed Robin Williams and all kinds of different celebrities. And then over here, I'm really proud of these. You can't really see them that well, but the animator who did Scar from Beauty and the Beast,
Hmm.
and also Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, Scar from The Lion King.
Lion King.
Yeah, he did two drawings for me, but I was really interested in being an animator. This is right before the dawn of the digital animation stage, so I probably would have gotten quickly out of doing it with my hand and doing it
Right.
differently. But yeah, it's a great form of creative expression. So you were interested in being a comic book artist, and your fourth grade teacher sent some of your art to Disney, and they responded and said, "Yeah, contact us when you're older."
Yeah, yeah. I think she was just trying to give me encouragement,
Yeah.
and I don't know. It's great because we had maybe you had this too. It's like so many wonderful people in your life, family members, friends, give you words of encouragement, and it's like whether I don't, they might be looking at this drawing because I've looked at drawings. I still have drawings now from when I was much younger, and
Yeah.
you can kind of see the progression of the skill set. So it's like
Yeah.
how better you've gotten. And I could picture my 6-year-old self showing this to my aunt at a
Hmm.
Thanksgiving thing, and then her going, "This is great." And I pull it up now, and I'm like, "This is not great." Like, were
Yeah.
you lying to me?
Right.
But I
It's
think
good to.
what it is that I think they saw potential, and they
Hmm.
knew that that was just my thing. And as a kid, like parents and family friends, they just want to try to foster
Yeah.
good habits and good hobbies. And I think she had just done that just to kind of keep me motivated and keep me doing it.
Yeah. So at some point you figured out that you could sell some of your work, some of your freelance graphic design work, and you started doing side gigs. How did you figure that out?
I think it had to do with a lot of just like fostering. I think so there's the feedback that you get where it's like, okay, you try not to get an inflated head, but you're like, maybe I'm good at this. This is something
Yeah.
that maybe I can turn into a career at some point.
Yeah.
And I think I had like an aunt that was like, I'll commission you $5 if you could draw my dog. And then
Mm.
so like a couple of that started to like the
Mm-hmm.
gears of entrepreneurialism like
Mm-hmm.
started to like maybe I can turn a profit with some of this with
Yeah.
these skills. So that was short-lived because I wasn't out there like hustling, trying to, I'm putting flyers up and stuff. I'll draw your dogs. Uh, I think what the transition happened when I really wanted to be a comic book artist. That was like my calling, I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And I put together a nice portfolio, and I wanted to work for Image Comics in Anaheim, California, and I wanted to join them in I wanted to have my own comic or contribute to an existing comic. Back then, my heroes went in the comic book industry were like Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, who created Deadpool, Jim Lee, who created Wildcats. They were the original founders of like one of what ended up being Marvel's rival, like
Mm.
a pretty large comic, because all these people came from Marvel, like in
Mm.
notable comics within Marvel. But I loved everything they put out. So I sent them, and then I got a rejection letter. Like it was come to find out, it's a pretty competitive space,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so my come to reality moment was like, well, I have these skills, and I was just about to enter college, and I was like, this isn't going to be my career. And I think that was just it hit me. It's going to be a hobby. I can keep it as a hobby. I shouldn't turn it into something more stressful than it is. I don't want to
Yeah.
have to draw. I want to draw.
Mm.
So the college that I went to, Tulane, here in New Orleans, just opened up a multimedia design uh, curriculum, a major. So media arts is what they were calling it. And then the criteria for that was like Photoshop, Illustrator, and like back then the Macromedia suite, which is like freehand and Fireworks and
When you say
Dreamweaver.
criteria, did you have to know how to use those programs coming in? Or are you saying that that
I'm
was what
sorry.
they
So maybe
taught
that
you?
criteria, like this was the like the core syllabus,
Curriculum.
like
Okay.
the correct. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
curriculum
Yeah.
is what I was looking for. The curriculum was like learning these tools and
Yeah.
creating whether it's art or creating design
Yeah.
for flyers, poster gigs, stationery packages, things like that. So I had one or two courses that were along those lines every semester or so. And then that's when I started thinking like, all right, now I'm like accumulating all these skills using Photoshop and Illustrator, understanding the differences between like bitmap and vector images. Now I'm gonna just like meet people and see if I can sell them stationery packages.
Yeah.
So there was multiple people. I would find little local businesses, freelance photographers, and things like that. My brother had a little business where it was called Anything Digital, where he would take anything analog, like videotapes and
Mm.
old
Mm-hmm.
wedding VHS, and then transfer them to discs,
Mm-hmm.
DVDs, and whatever. So I made his logo and then and his stationery package and all that kind of stuff. My wife worked for a local tile company here that specialized in high-end tile. Uh, Shout out to Stafford Tile and Stone. And I said, hey, could you ask? Because she had like no branding or anything. And this is
Yeah.
one of those things where there was no consistency with her flyers or anything that she
Yeah.
put out there. So I said, hey, can I make you a logo and a stationery package? I'll charge you like $200 for it. And she's like, yeah, go for it. So I made her a logo, a stationery package, envelope, letterhead, business card,
Yeah.
and she loved it. And it was
Mm.
great. She made a giant wooden sign outside on Magazine Street. It's still there today.
Oh, cool.
So, and here we're
With the
like
same design.
same design. Well, I
Yeah.
think it's a different sign now because the old one got weathered, but it's still the same logo. So that was my first taste into like, okay, I could do this professionally.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until she asked if I could make a website because this is 2002, I guess.
Yeah.
2000
Yeah. So pre WordPress then.
pre-WordPress.
Yeah.
I think like Drupal might have been around back then, but I think maybe what was the big one? Like LiveJournal was probably the
Okay.
closest you can get to like something WordPress like. But I didn't even know what content management systems were back then though. So
Yeah.
this is just me going, okay, I have this like cracked version of Macromedia Suite, which is Macromedia Suite eventually bought by Adobe, which included Freehand, which is like a vector design software, Fireworks, which is almost Figma-like. That's the tool that we use today, but it's basically software to create UI, like user interfaces, is
Yeah.
mainly what it's meant to be used for. And then Dreamweaver, which is the coding, it's the code editor. So I said, sure, I can make you a website, and I had no idea how to make a
Yeah.
website. I just
Yeah.
knew I had these tools, and I figured what better way to learn by holding myself accountable and
Yeah.
charting into the unknown. So I remember going into fireworks and like building out this beautifully designed homepage that like had a like a carousel thing that faded in and out all these different interior designs that used all of the various brands, the tile brands that she sold, and the whole web page, the whole website was like 6 or 7 pages, and I remember coding each page or designing
I
each
mean
page.
that those things must have been a pain to do back then. So much
Yeah.
easier now, I imagine.
Oh, much easier now. Yeah, this
Yeah.
was all like very re redundant code too, because I didn't know
Yeah.
what I was doing. So I was
Yeah.
designing each page, whole
Yeah.
page, even though they're like reusable elements in those pages, just again. So anytime I needed to make an update to like a footer,
Yeah.
I would make it in each one of those pages.
Yeah.
So, and Fireworks had this nifty export to Dreamweaver function. So it took my code and it like spliced it up and did all these things. And sure enough, made it into a very gross, if you look at the view source, all tables and like weird class names and stuff, but it made it into a website and it worked. I remember that moment going like, I just made a website. This is great. Figuring out how to get it hosted was like a whole nother process
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't understand anything about
Mm-hmm.
DevOps
Mm.
or hosting or DNS or domains or how that even matches up with the website that I created. Eventually, I went with Media Temple. That was the host there. I think GoDaddy bought them recently. But the support staff at Media Temple were the ones that shepherded this along for me.
They
I
helped
remember
you.
being on the
Yeah.
phone with them saying, okay, I got an index.htm file in here. Where do I know? Okay, well, upload it. Now upload it, drag it into this window and do this.
I remember these days. It used to be such a pain in the butt
Yeah,
doing all
this
that
is
stuff. Yeah.
FTP process.
Yeah.
This is the file
Oh, the
transfer
worst.
protocol. So I'm just like,
The
so
worst.
I'm like, I'm this concept. I'm dragging things from my computer and it's going
To the
somewhere
web.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that was like that concept was just so difficult to understand back then. But eventually I did it and she loved it. And she kept it up for like 15 years.
Wow.
Like it was like it got a lot
Mm.
of traction out of it. In fact, I think the one that's there today is based off of the one that I did because she
Yeah.
did well. It worked out well for her. And
And you
then
figured out that this was a career for you. This is something that you could pursue professionally.
that was when the light bulb started clicking
Yeah.
and going like this feels like the perfect mix of a hobby that I love,
Mm-hmm.
design, art,
Mm-hmm.
creativity, with something that feels like it's only slated to grow, like just the
Yeah.
whole industry of digital technology and the
Right.
internet. And I was like, I got to get into this and like really deeply understand all the aspects of web design and development. That led me into I keep talking about the Macromedia suite. That led me into Flash. Like, are you familiar with Flash?
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear
Yeah.
about it anymore because it's
No,
gone.
no. Yeah.
Adobe buried it. But that was when you created code with objects. So like there's a canvas area where you can actually import images or create vector graphics in there. And you can use this little tweening tool to like move a ball from one side of the screen to the other. But then there was also this thing called ActionScript, which is like code where you can actually say target ball, move ball X coordinate to Y coordinate, and then watch it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that's when things started really clicking because ActionScript is very similar to JavaScript, which is a front end language. And then that transitioned me into being a front end enthusiast, and which is what my
Mm-hmm.
company is today. We do primarily front end design and development on a much more complex and large scale the code
Yeah.
stacks, tech stacks, but that was the gateway drug, Flash in just that whole Macromedia suite.
And so you eventually end up working for Emeril for his restaurant group. What was that experience like? He's, iconic, one of the famous food chefs, celebrity chefs.
Yeah, that was an incredible experience. That kind of came out where so I just graduated college, and I was the graduating class of Katrina, so 2006.
Wow.
So
So what was
Katrina had,
that? What was your experience like with that? That was, by the way, that was the weekend my wife and I got married here in the San Francisco Bay Area. It was just tragic watching the news unfold as
oh
we're going through this happy moment in our life.
Yeah, no, it was a traumatic experience for everybody, to say the least. But it was our final semester it was our final year, senior year in college. Both my wife and I both
Oh,
graduated
you
at the
were
same time.
Tulane. Actually, the funny thing was, my wife then immediately after that was at Cal State East Bay, and they had these Tulane scholars. I just remembered this. A big group of Tulane students ended up coming to Cal State East Bay and probably a bunch of other universities too, in order to finish up their degree.
We did too.
Wow.
Not Cal State, but we ended
Yeah.
up going to University of Central Florida.
Wow.
So we transferred. So I'm like 4 years in Tulane, which is a school that I never thought I would ever be able to get into
Yeah.
or graduate from,
And
much
by the
less.
way, how did you end up going to? I think of it as like kind of an expensive private college. How did you end up going to an expensive
Yeah.
private college after your upbringing?
I paid my way through it. So
Wow.
I worked, I paid my way through the majority of it. Lots of it were loans.
Hmm.
I forgot Sally Mae loans. I think I also got some debt forgiveness type things because of the tax bracket, like my family was in, or
Okay. Uh-huh.
so there were some incentives to be able
And
to
did you figure
afford it.
this all out yourself? Was your mom or grandma able to help you with that stuff, or is that all you're
No,
all on your own?
it was me and my wife,
You and
actually.
your
Well, my
wife.
girlfriend back then,
You
but
met when? In high school?
in 2001. Yep. No,
Was that in high school?
we met through mutual friends. There was two friends that lived with each other, and one of the roommates' girlfriends was best friends with my wife, and I was friends with the other roommate. So like it wasn't uncommon for like both
Yeah.
friend
Yeah.
parties to be around each other. And it was a random Wednesday, and I just went to go hang out at his house, and then met her. We hit it off, and it was like, this is great. And then 6 months later, we moved in. Actually, it was like 3 months later we moved
Wow.
in,
While in
and
college.
while she was already in college and I was on my way to college, my
Okay.
parents wanted me to get into a trade. That was like so I ended up going to a community college in St. Bernard, Chalmette, called Nunez Community College, because I didn't know what I wanted to do
Yeah.
right away. But it was when my wife and I were looking at doing something more, because I didn't want to do pizza restaurants and
Yeah.
trades, because I'm not
So
built for any of that.
your
No,
wife helped you to figure out how to get to Tulane then?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Got it.
and back then the internet wasn't as robust as it is today.
Right,
So it was a
right.
lot of
There was many
calling
resources.
people,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, trying to
Yeah,
figure out
reading
like,
physical books
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
we had a
Yeah.
magazine that had
Yeah.
like the curriculum in it
Classes.
for all of the majors that you could choose from. And I remember seeing the media arts one and going, I've got to do this. Like, this
Yeah.
is where I need to put all my attention in. Um,
Back to Emeril. So you were so and sorry, and Hurricane Katrina. So you said that you were, Hurricane Katrina hits, and did you get out in time, or were you there when it hit?
So Hurricane Katrina came in the way it's interesting the way us New Orleanians treat hurricanes. And we do as much as we can to try to watch the news. Back then the technology wasn't nearly as advanced as it is today. But we pay attention to things. But more often than not, the hurricanes that come here fizzle out. And there isn't much damage done, or it takes a right hook and then ends up somewhere
Yeah.
in like the
Yeah.
Pensacola Panhandle area, or
And
left and ends up in like
this was a bullseye hit. It turned
well,
out, yeah,
so
right?
we left about 3 days before Katrina hit. I remember we went to a Saints game. The Saints played the Giants. We lost, and then we went and hung out at a local bar, and then we went home. And my mother-in-law called and said, "Hey, we got to get out of here tonight, like because this hurricane's coming." So we were all like, "Whatever, let's pack up a overnight bag, and then we'll go to Houston." We call them hurricanes because it's always like an excuse to go someplace else and
Hmm.
experience something new and like a little short 2-day vacation. So we went to the St. Regis Hotel in Houston, drove 4 or 5
Classy.
hours. So, but we thought it was just going to be a 2 or 3 day trip. So we're like, let's make it nice. And I remember being in the hotel room with like a robe on, laying in bed, and then watching the news. And it wasn't the hurricane that really did the damage. It was the levees that broke, that flooded the cities,
Yeah.
that flooded the majority. New Orleans is shaped like a bowl, and like the
Mm.
edges of the bowl are the levee.
Hmm.
And then if anything gets over the levee, then the city fills up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. There were like two major levee breaches from like two opposite ends of the city, New Orleans East and Lakeview area. And then the city, the whole, the one that was actually spared the best was the French Quarter, because the French
Mm,
Quarter is on higher ground, and
mm,
I think that's why it's been there for so long. But when that happened, we were like, oh crap, like we're not going back anytime soon, and we can't afford to stay here for
yeah.
another 3 or 4 weeks. So that's when we started calling up people who lived in like Baton Rouge and Texas and Orlando and relatives and seeing who can we stay with. So fast forward, I drive my mother-in-law's car from uh, uh, Texas to Orlando, like almost
Wow.
straight through. Like it was like a 16-hour drive or something. And it was a caravan of us. It was three.
Mm,
It was like the three men in the family. It was like my
hmm.
uncle, my father-in-law, and me, all driving three separate cars. And I had a dog in the back of mine. And the ladies were all going to fly in
Mm,
Orlando. We're going to Orlando because we had a space there.
mm.
My father-in-law could continue his work from there because he had a second home base, a second headquarters over there. And then so we're like, all right, we're in Orlando. We have no idea how long we're going to be here. Let's enroll in the local college because we want to graduate on time. And so we enrolled. The people at University of Central Florida was so accommodating. It was
Mm,
amazing. Like
mm.
they let us in. We took a couple of classes. The public university versus a private university was very different to me. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
like
Very
thousands
different,
of
right?
people on campus versus like Tulane, which is relatively small.
Yeah.
And like you kind of know everybody on campus. So we did that for a while, and then we got the call that Tulane was actually going to start offering online courses to
Mm,
be able to fulfill the rest of the semester.
mm.
So we ended up unenrolling through
Yeah.
University of Central Florida and re-enrolling in Tulane. And my wife went to Loyola, which is like the sister school to Tulane. And then we both took our courses, and then we were able to graduate on time. And our graduating class was amazing. It was star-studded. It was Ellen DeGeneres. It was George W. Bush. It was Bill
Oh, because they
Clinton.
all came to speak
They all
to
came to speak.
got it.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. It was star-studded, and
Yeah.
it was amazing. Like just really good inspirational speeches. And I just remember being like, this was the right move. I'm glad
Came back.
we
Yeah.
ended up making it back and then doing it right. And
And
that was
by
great.
the way, you mentioned your father-in-law having multiple headquarters. It sounds like maybe you married into a family that didn't have the same level of poverty that you experienced growing up. What was that like for you coming into a family like that, your wife's family?
Unexpected and a little bit unnerving because I didn't know how to conduct myself in the normal things that they do.
Such
I'll
as
tell you a story.
like
Um,
dinner manners around the dinner table or what?
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So Ruth's Chris Steakhouse so Ruth's Chris Steakhouse started here in New Orleans, and there was another location that they would frequent often, and that was just like a regular steak dinner for them. You know, that could be a weekly event. To me, like to our family, that would have meant somebody got a giant promotion or a big
Hmm.
raise or like
Right.
won the lottery or something.
Yeah.
And I remember her asking me if I would join her mother-in-law and a family friend for dinner over there. And I was like, absolutely. And I went to my brother, 2 years older than me, and I was like, I don't know what to wear. He's already been in a relationship, and he's actually married to the person that he was with back then. And I was like, I don't know what to wear, and do you have any clothes I could borrow? And so he loaned me some khaki pleated Dockers, and I mean, it was like some kind of but I just didn't have
Yeah.
anything. I never wore anything nice, so I never needed anything nice. But he
Yeah.
did because he had a good job. He ended up working for Entergy, and so he was able to like pick himself up and be like a middle class citizen.
Yeah.
So I borrowed the clothes from him, and I made it there. And I don't know whether I was overdressed or underdressed. I just know I looked disheveled because it wasn't
Yeah.
my clothes and it didn't fit exactly the way it needed to. But I remember being at that dinner table, not knowing like where's my spoon go? What's a bread plate? Like why
Right.
is this one? Why is this little plate? What's a charger? Like there's all these different like scenarios of how like a fine dining dinner is set up,
Right.
and trying so hard not to embarrass myself, and like they're drinking wine and I don't know how to drink wine, like all
Yeah.
of these things. So
Not to
it
mention,
took a
like
while to
ordering
get
off the
used to
menu. A lot of times, there's different words on there that you might not
that
understand.
whole thing too. And
I'm
also,
like that all even to this day. I'm like, what is this thing? Oh, it's a cheese. Got it. Okay.
right. It's a fromage.
Yeah.
I remember looking at the prices of the steaks and being like really concerned about whether or not I'm ordering something that's too expensive for this, just in case I had to pay for
In case you had to
my
pay, 'cause yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And like I didn't want to ask because I didn't want to sound stupid.
Right.
But so I was just like, let me go with like the baby fillet or the petite
Yeah.
fillet or whatever
Yeah.
it is because I'm hungry,
Right.
but I don't want to like order the $80 steak meal.
Right.
I'm gonna stick with like the $22 steak meal because this is at least something I can afford if it came down to it. But yeah, they're definitely wealthier than my family was, and so
Right.
it took some getting used to. But it was it was also something that I think that incentivized me to want to become an entrepreneur. Now I knew what I didn't want to do, but I also had like a North Star now. Now I had
Mm.
like I like that. I got a taste
Mm-hmm.
for like I've always said like there's points in your life where it's like there's the the basic necessities, the roof over your head, food
Yeah.
for you and your family to eat, and clothes on your back. Those are like the three things that as
Yeah.
long as I have these things, I'm fine. But as you get older, there's more milestones and benchmarks. And I remember the moment when I didn't have to look at the gas pump when I was pumping my gas to fill a
Mm.
tank. That
Mm.
was a big moment for me because I was like, it's almost like there's little steps to like I made it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just remember just going, I got a half a tank right now. I'm just going to fill it up and then fill in a
Mm.
gas tank up and not even bothering to look at the little dealie because I
Yeah.
knew I had enough in my bank account to pay for that. So
Mm.
and like there's little moments like that. It's like sometimes
Right.
when you can go to the grocery store and they're like you treat yourself to things like ice cream or something,
Yeah.
and then there's the Blue Bell ice cream, which is like the affordable one, and then there's like the Haagen-Dazs, like something that's
Mm-hmm.
like a little bit nicer and probably better for you as far as ice cream goes. And then there's the moment when it's like, now this has become the norm. Like this is the
Yeah.
default one that we go to.
And
Um,
your father-in-law, what did he do? And did you learn something from him?
Absolutely. So he was Emeril's business partner.
Oh,
So
okay.
so
Okay.
that I got in with so the way that the way the transition of the path went. Um, Emeril and Tony, Emeril and my father-in-law worked together for nearly 26 years. And
Wow.
so he did a lot of his finance management,
Mm.
negotiated a lot of the
He's a
deals
behind the scenes guy.
behind the scenes. So like he
Okay.
got him on he got the deal with him on Food
Okay.
Network. He got the deals for all of his shows, the Cooking with Emeril, the Emeril Live, Essence of Emeril. He also did all the cookbook deals and worked all that. So he was just a really good business person. He was
Yeah.
really like very savvy, very intense, but also like very caring and loving with his
Hmm.
family and very protective. But he was an amazing inspiration and mentor along the way. So when he knew what I was going to college for, and he knew that it was technology related and web related. So Emeril already exists. Emerils.com was the website that existed out there. But after Katrina happened, a lot of those people fled. Like they all had to
Mm.
go to do whatever they needed to do to protect their families and get
A
new
lot of the people that
jobs.
worked for his company fled.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like he lost most restaurants, New Orleans-based restaurants.
Oh,
It
he
took a
had.
long
Is he
time
from
to.
New Orleans originally?
No, he's from Fall River. He's from Fall River, Massachusetts, but
Okay. But he
he
had.
left there.
Okay.
He had beautiful accolades. He went to. He actually was going to go to Carnegie Mellon for drumming. Like that was
But Emerald had restaurants that he lost in New Orleans, and he lost
yes,
people. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
They're back now, but after months and months and months
Okay.
of renovating them. But he came to New Orleans. He was an executive chef for a famous restaurant here called Commander's Palace. And then it was when him and my father-in-law got together and said, "Hey, let's start a restaurant." And
And
that's when they
that's what
started the
started.
flagship
Okay.
restaurant, Emeril's New Orleans. That's still
Okay.
here and that operates to this day. Wonderful restaurant. So after Katrina happened, they lost their webmaster. Back then, they were called
Okay.
webmasters.
Webmasters.
And
Yeah.
at that point, I had only been interning at a couple of different agencies here locally. And he's like, you know, websites, can you help us like unlock these things? And like they needed to use the website to communicate with the hospitality staff to
Mm,
be like, hey, you know,
mm,
banner at the top. We're going to reopen Emerald's Delmonico, you know, in October of
mm,
2007. We'd love for you to come back.
mm.
And then they would make these announcements for. So I had figured out how to get into the system, and I already
Yeah.
knew about like how to work with servers, and so I took that job, and they offered me the job to be that person. So I was happy to take it.
Yeah, so
Uh,
that sounds like a big kind of opportunity for you. And then what point did that move to you end up moving to New York to work
yeah,
for Martha
this
Stewart? So how did that come about?
This is an easy transition. So I worked for Emerald for a couple of years, doing the web stuff, and it was awesome. I loved it. I got to have so much fun. They had a test kitchen and home base. It was called Emerald's home base. So I got to go downstairs and like eat the food that they were
Oh,
testing for the
that's cool.
cookbooks.
Nice
So
perk.
yeah, and my office was like right next to the test kitchen. So I just like go down the stairs and I'd pop my head in there and like, what you doing? You got any cookies today? And sometimes I would video content for the website that we put
Oh,
on the
cool.
website because we had a really nice blog section for the website. And so what had happened was my father-in-law brokered a deal between Martha Stewart and Emeril Lagasse for like the merchandise and entertainment portion of his business. So basically like the restaurant portion split off from everything else,
Mm,
and all the entertainment pieces, like all the rights to the merchandise and the shows and any other appearances, festivals, all that kind of stuff, went to Martha, and the restaurants created a different. So it ended up being like Emerald's Restaurant Group for the restaurant portion, and my job was within the marketing area. So that was kind of the department that my
okay.
role fell into. That went with the purchase of Martha. So at that point, I had two choices. One was either not do it, like
Hmm.
go work someplace else, find a new job, or move to New York and go work for Emeril through Martha.
Okay.
And that's what we had two cats. We were married. We owned a house back then, but we ended up renting it out. And we said, let's do it.
Hmm.
So in June of 2008, we packed up and drove to New York. And we lived on 52nd and 2nd in Midtown East in Manhattan.
What a change for you, having been in New Orleans your whole life.
And so it was me, my father-in-law, and family, and Emeril that all moved
Mhm.
out there together.
Oh,
So I
okay.
lived on 52nd and 2nd. Emeril lived on 51st and 2nd, and my father-in-law lived on 50th and 2nd. So we all
Okay.
lived like in the same spot in the block.
Yeah.
So our nights and weekends when we weren't working consisted of just going around Manhattan and eating at fancy restaurants with Emeril. So it was
Wow. That
so it
must have
was
been
going
fun.
from like the it was amazing. We were
Yeah.
like living the best version of
Yeah.
our lives in that moment. Oh, what we think,
Yeah.
like within context, because I would say right
Right.
now is probably the best that I've ever lived. But like in that moment,
But
we
being
were
able to live it up in New York with a celebrity chef is got to be amazing.
the most beautiful. We have so many stories. We could do a version two of this, but there's so many moments when it's like when you're with a celebrity chef like that who's highly respected, and at this point he was still very popular. Like Emerald Live was still very
Mm.
popular, so he was noticeable when he was walking
Hmm.
down the street. But he didn't really have any bodyguards or anything that was he
Yeah.
wasn't that famous, you know. But when we go eat with him, it was always an event because when you go to sit at this restaurant, the chefs want to just bring you food. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
like you're
Yeah.
getting things that you did not order. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, sure, I'll
And
try
you got to eat
the
it. You can't
scallops.
reject
And
it, right? You got to
I
eat these things,
know,
right?
yeah, yeah. And there's been moments when it's just like, you know, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Well, like he has a shtick for like how he would say it. It's like, you know, we're just here to order this food and get out of here. But we've had many a moments where we would go in for brunch,
Yeah.
and then we're sitting there, we get a brunch menu, and then we've been there so long, we get a dinner menu. Like,
Jeez. Wow.
it's
Wow.
like just because like they keep serving food and then drinks
Wow.
are flowing, and
Wow.
but yeah, just the dichotomy of like the way I grew up
Yeah,
versus
from
like
what you
that
grew up,
whole
like not,
process.
as you mentioned earlier about going out to a steakhouse for the first time to experiencing that, that must have been just mind blowing for you.
It was truly like a rags to riches story. Not me being like rich or anything.
Hmm.
Like things progressively got better for me financially. I mean, but it is New York, so the cost of living is always
Yeah.
a factor.
Expensive. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And what did
but
you learn from working indirectly from Martha? Were you around her much? Did you observe her and, behind the scenes?
she was around. Yeah, so we worked in a building called the Starrett Lehigh Building on this Chelsea West Side Highway area, New York. And she was very much a part of the day to day when she wasn't like filming because she still had her shows that she was filming at a studio that wasn't too far from where the main headquarters was. But she was very much around and in the business, and she was very. My job transitioned from just a standard front end developer managing Emeril's and Martha properties to director of front end development, managing all of the front end areas for all of the various digital products that Martha supported. Um, she was very into the website. And
Really?
since I was responsible for the things you see, the user sees on the website, there were many encounters. If there was a bug that she would be finding on her phone
Mm,
when she was driving, when she was
mm,
getting driven into work. So there were
mm.
lots of conversations that I had to get pulled into where it's
To
like,
fix
uh,
something.
fix or
Yeah.
just like describe what she's seeing if it's not really a bug or an error. It's just like that's the way it was designed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there were a lot of like kind of false bugs. But the one of my favorite stories is so she lived in like a ranch that was like in upstate New York, but she would still get driven into work pretty often. And she had it's a farm with farm animals and chickens
Yeah.
and the cows and I don't know if it had cows, but she had definitely a lot of chickens.
Think she had
And
a, actually, you know what? My brother works in reality TV and he's been to there for one of her shows. She did a show there.
yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
called Skylands or
Yeah.
something like that. But she would probably on a monthly basis or so, she would come in with a giant tub of farm fresh eggs, and she would send out a mass email to everybody
Come
in the
get some eggs.
office, come get some eggs, limit three per person. And then you
Yeah.
would see people with their little
3 eggs.
the little six carton, like a half a
Yeah.
dozen
3
carton,
Martha
and
eggs.
lined up right by your assistant's desk, just waiting to like pick out their little eggs. And
That's nice.
they were always present. It was such a cool. It was all the it was all glass bowls, like glass. We call them fish bowls. All the offices, all the it's
Hmm.
a very open floor plan the way it was set up. But her office is right next to Emeril's office, and I just
Hmm.
remember it was on the way to the bathroom. So it's like I'm just on the way to the bathroom, going, "There's Emeril and there's Martha, and I
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
here." And that was just the coolest moment. Like
What
I'll
it's
I
kind of
won't
an
trade
odd
any of that
pairing.
ever.
Like it's kind of an odd pairing, the two of them, kind of two celebrities in their own right, and then working behind the scenes, with their offices next to one another. Did it work out okay?
It worked out great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Hmm.
they did a lot of it was when the Hallmark Channel was just starting to come out.
Hmm.
So they created a series of shows on the Hallmark Channel. So he
Hmm.
kind of like pioneered a lot of that
Hmm.
stuff on that channel. It was right when a lot of like web media was coming out. So like YouTube was really big and they had a lot of content was shifting from like blog-based article things to more long-form type content that
Oh
had rich
yeah.
media embedded in it.
Yeah.
So there would be like a lot of like recipes were now showing clips on how to
Mm.
julienne the carrots for
So
the mirepoix.
you were involved in creating that content, or someone else would create it and you were involved in like displaying it.
We were
Yeah.
developing the templates for it. So
Got it. Okay.
we were building the interfaces that housed the all the different media that we put on the various websites.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, you okay on time right now? If we keep on
Yeah,
going a
I'm,
little
I'm good.
longer? Okay.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
totally fine.
So you spend about, it looks like at least about was it a number of years working for Martha, and you're living it up in New York City and all kind of stuff. And eventually I guess maybe get the itch to start your own thing. Southleft starts right after working at Martha. So how did that come about? I mean, in some ways, like once you punch your ticket working for an iconic celebrity or a couple of iconic celebrities like that, that gives you great cachet in the marketplace. So how did that transition happen?
Yeah. So if you ever lived in New York, then then especially if you're a transient New Yorker, somebody who never didn't grow up or understand how to live in New York, and especially Manhattan, there's like a honeymoon period. And that's kind of what I was describing earlier. It's like you're going out to dinners, you're going out to
Yeah.
bars, and you're just like really experiencing and immersing
And
yourself
then
into
and
like
then
this New
winter
York lifestyle.
hits.
Winter was brutal. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
would hate when I would watch the morning news and we just check to see what the weather's going to be like. And then they would go, today's going to be a wintry mix. And that basically just
Ugh.
meant like snow, sleet, hail, cold weather, lots of
Ugh.
wind, all this stuff. And I just knew that's when yeah, everybody in New York wears black. You just put on your black trench coat, put on your
Mm,
hood, put on your face mask and everything.
mm,
And I just remember whipping around. Like, you turn around one of those corners and then the wind just hits you because like New
mm,
York's just a big grid.
mm-hmm.
But so honeymoon period was about to be over, and now we're just like we live here. In My wife and I would ask ourselves, like, is this worth it? Like, is
Mm,
this because we lived in a very busy area. We thought about moving to Long Island or
yeah.
Queens or
Some
Brooklyn or
of those.
someplace that wasn't nearly as foot trafficy as the area that we lived in. But it always felt like every morning when I stepped out of the apartment complex that it's like you're on. It's like showtime. And I remember that. It's like I can equate it to like merging into a busy interstate when you get
Mm,
on the sidewalk right out of my apartment door or
mm,
my apartment complex door. And then it's it. And I understand the New York mindset. It's headphones in, head down, fast pace, walk, veer in and out of people. You get upset when people are walking slow in front of you, or if someone's
mm-hmm.
keeping the same pace as you and you're side by side. All these little idiosyncrasies.
Yeah.
And then
I live in Northern California, so I don't understand this
very
stuff.
different, very different.
Yeah.
I just remember the flight of stairs because the escalator was always broke at 53rd and Lex for the subway. It was like if you chained together 6 flights of stairs, and just it was brutal in the summer
Oof,
because like if you were
yeah.
in a collared shirt and you got your bag on, you just got
Oh
this
yeah, it's
sweat stain right
sweaty.
here. It's
Uh-huh.
awful.
Yeah.
Anyway, all of that added up, and then eventually my wife was like, I'm gone. I had enough. I'm leaving." She's like, she liked her job. She worked for this great company called well, I'm not going to name drop them, but it was a psychological consulting firm
Okay.
in New York where she managed operations and did a lot of their accounting. She has an accounting background. This is going to
So
help
she,
with the story.
she, so she was done. She wanted to leave,
She was like,
go
I'm
back
good with New
home.
York. I want to go back
Yeah.
home. And her calling has always been teaching. Like she
Mm.
wanted to be elementary school teacher. So she ended up enrolling in UNO, University of New Orleans here, and then getting her master's degree in education, and then ended up serving as a elementary and middle school teacher for a couple of years out here. I was still finishing out my tenure. Like
So you stayed behind. She went back home.
I
That's
stayed
hard on that.
behind.
That's hard.
For about a year and a half, we flew back and forth every
Mm,
weekend. We
mm,
became JetBlue was our buddies.
mm-hmm,
I knew everything in the T5
mm,
JFK terminal. We were Mosaic members. We had the JetBlue credit cards and everything. Still do, and we still fly JetBlue all the time because we go to New York pretty often. But accumulated those points really quickly. Then after a while, I could feel myself started to get that same feeling that my wife had, and then I let my mentor and boss back then, Ira Tao. He's one of the reasons I am where I am. I let him know I'm gonna give you a 6 month notice. I understand the director level might take a while to find, so I have a team that I'm responsible for. Let's start interviewing people, and I'll do the
mm-hmm.
interviewing. I'll write the job description. So he was like, really sad to see me leave. And then one day he calls me in his office and he says, "So what are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm going back home. I want to go back home and I want to start my own thing." At that time, responsive web design was really taking off, and
Mm,
this notion of mobile first movement, like
yeah.
focusing on accessibility and performance and best practices in web, and then I pride myself on being the person that spearheaded MarthaStewart.com to be responsive, one of the
Mm,
first lifestyle brand publications that went responsive. And I was doing things on the side anyway, just to keep myself busy. Because when you
mm.
work for a product company and you work in one code base, you tend to vibrate a little.
Yeah,
It's
probably
like
got
I want to
a
go
little
try other
boring after a
things.
while, right? I mean, you probably
Yeah,
did everything
it's
you needed to do, right?
exactly. Unless
Yeah,
it's like a migration or some new tech that you're going
yeah,
to be involved,
yeah.
which is very rare. But so at night to keep my senses sharp, I would just dabble in new tech. And then I was just thinking, I want to do this. Like
Hmm.
this is the part that I get into that elusive flow state that I remember having as a
Yeah.
kid. And I want to do that. I want to do more of this, and I want to do more for other people. Like I want to meet different walks
Yeah.
of life. I want to work in different industries. And so I told him that, and I said, I'm moving back home, starting my own thing. And he was like, he said, give me a second. I'm gonna go talk to Martha. And then so a couple of days go by, and he comes, asks me, brings me in his office again, and he says, "Can you get me?" This is coming full circle. Can you make me a letterhead, a stationery package? Can you make me a stationery package, a business card, envelope, letterhead with your logo on it? And so Southleft, I had just made that name up. There's a whole story behind it. It's on our website. But he was like, I just need these things for like legals who approve this transition because we'd like to be your first client. And I was
Mm.
like, what? Because
Mm.
I was expecting, I already had a couple of
Yeah.
clients that I think would make ends meet if I moved
Yeah.
into like a lower income area in New Orleans until things start picking up. And if it
Yeah.
didn't, then I would just go try to find a job with an agency or a product company. But she said, I want them for 40 hours a week for an entire year at $100 an hour. And I was like, that
I'll get you started.
is wild.
Yeah.
So I had the 40 hours a week that I was working for her for an entire
Yeah.
year, plus the three or four other clients and accumulating clients. So an average work week for me was somewhere between like 70 and 80 hours a week.
Wow.
And then my wife, she was getting really disinterested in the school board with the schools that she worked in. So she said, "I'm quitting school and I'm going to be your accountant," because she had all this accounting and bookkeeping background. So it was
Mm-hmm.
a no-brainer. It was
Yeah.
like, I don't know anything about invoicing and accounts
Right.
receivable and accounts payable or anything financial related, but she did. She didn't know anything about coding or design or
Yeah.
web, but I did. So we just made the perfect match, and it just made sense. And we were both really confident in each other to be able to like push this forward
Now,
and do
how
it.
were you able to make a transition from doing that full 40 hours for Martha? Or, sometimes that's a tough adjustment. Like they expect you, right? So it's hard for you with an existing client to bring in someone else so that you can work on the business or that you
Yeah.
can bring in other clients or other things you need to do.
So fast forward the next year, they wanted to renew the agreement. And then that was a crossroads. It was like,
Mm,
do I take the easy money and keep doing the same thing and working on the same code base
right.
while working these ridiculously long hours trying to fulfill the other clients that I had that weren't Martha? Or do I negotiate and try to keep this around, but then also throw out a lifeline and like try to
Yeah.
figure out like whether I can accumulate a much larger
Yeah.
client base that isn't Martha related. So we negotiated 6 months, 20 hours a week. So
Okay.
basically half and half.
Yeah.
And the most wonderful thing happened at that point because after a year of doing that, all my colleagues that worked within that organization all kind of like left and went to do their own things. And in the lifestyle digital publication industry back then, everything was kind of incestuous. Like people who went to Martha came from Condé Nast. People
Mm,
who went to Condé Nast came from Hearst. And so
hmm.
like all the or Time Inc., like so they all kind of went around. So they end up moving to all these or starting their own things. One of my best friends started his own agency. We still work together to this day. Most of those people I still stay in contact with.
Mm.
So we ended up doing business with Time Inc. We ended up doing business with Condé Nast. We ended up doing business with
Oh,
Scripps
your
Network.
Southleft, your new
Yeah.
company, and okay, so you get them.
So
So you
so
moved to New
eventually,
Orleans, and you're getting all these New York clients.
yeah.
Then, yeah, that's
Yeah, so I
great.
was
Yeah.
I lived in New Orleans. A lot of back then we would do kickoffs in person. So we
Oh,
would
so
kick a
you'd fly
project off. I'd
in.
fly in.
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
JetBlue points really came in handy back then. Uh, so I was doing that, going back and forth, meeting with clients, and just doing it right, the old school kind of madman way, just making sure that I'm taking them out to dinner and
Yeah.
being hospitable. Very New Orleans
Yeah.
chivalry, is not
Yeah.
dead. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this the old school way, and that resonated with a lot of people. And I ended up getting South ended up getting like kind of named synonymously with lifestyle brand digital publications.
Mm,
So we ended up working mainly in the digital publication industry,
mm.
working with a lot of amazing people along the way. Eventually, we needed to kind of shed that a little bit. We still work with a lot of lifestyle brands
Uh-huh.
and love all of them dearly. But we needed, as we grew and as the team grew and as our skill sets got deeper and more vast, we wanted to sink our teeth into like other front end
Mm.
things. Back then, frameworks were coming out, like React was coming out, and it was getting a lot of wind behind it, and Angular. And so we wanted to start taking on some of these more software as a service type products development. And that progressed, and that's kind of where we are today. Like the biggest gratitude that I have is for my father-in-law, Tony, my mentor and boss back then, Ira Tao, and Martha. Like
Yeah.
those are the people who paved the way to get me where I am today.
Well, this has been really great, TJ, and that's a perfect transition to what was going to be my last question. It is my last question. Big fan of gratitude, and you want to go a little more in depth on that,
Absolutely.
you can feel free to mention any others that you want as well, people that you're grateful to.
Sure, yeah. If I could look at a visual timeline of like of how my life went, and I would say my father-in-law Tony, he was the first person to give me a shot. Like he was somebody who said, I'm a take a risk on this kid. This is obviously like this celebrity shaft is at its height right now. I'm going to trust him with our digital experience, and I'm going to let him run with it and see what happens with it. And it was a bet that I hope he thinks he won that a risk that I think that it was a safe bet and only benefited him going forward. Ira is another one who just believed in me from the start. Like I wasn't afraid to speak my mind almost to like the detriment of my career. In so if I was very, very passionate about accessibility and performance and the users and I was still am like Southleft, I always say exists within the space between design and development because I spent my whole career trying to narrow that gap. And I had a lot of like what we call birds of a feather talks where I would just like ask if I could borrow a meeting room in the headquarters in the offices, and then I would just do presentations and ask, and he was the one he would attend them and he would say like this is a good idea, I think we should do it, and then he would go talk to like some of the CEOs and other stakeholders to say we should prioritize this piece of development or whatever it is that I was trying to get move forward. And then I also for him believing in me in this business. And I ended up working with him after he left Martha on other projects too.
Mm.
And because we just worked really well together. And then last but not least, Martha, like Martha was the one who I gotta imagine that had to have been some legal stuff that had like it's like when you're a full-time employee of an organization and then you leave that organization, then you become a 1099.
Right. It can be a
Like
little complicated.
it
Yeah.
seemed like there might be some conflict of interest or something going on there, but she was able to navigate all that.
Yeah.
And all she
Well,
needed
if
from me
Martha
was a
wants it done,
stationery package.
I imagine
And
if Martha wants it done, they get it done.
she probably just like brought that stationery package and slapped it on the
Yeah.
legal
Make it
department's
happen.
desk and said, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
hire this kid.
Yeah. Thinking back on it, I didn't ask you this earlier, but any other things you learned from her as a business leader,
Oh,
that
geez.
you can take away from it?
Yeah, she was kind of similar to Tony. Like she was just a really good, savvy business person. And she had all these like techniques where like she would talk and she would stay quiet and she would have long pauses where you can tell that there was like something going on. And then she would just like spout out this knowledge, like
Mm,
something that was just like, where did that come from?
mm,
She was always very thoughtful when it came to providing feedback for things, but she was also not afraid to like be angry. She was not afraid of friction. Like she
mm,
was she was like I don't want to say a tyrant in a boardroom, but she would question everything. Like there
mm,
was those moments when it's like, why would you choose that color? Like
mm,
what like I don't understand what you're doing here. And there was nothing fluffy about the way that and she was just
direct.
very direct and business minded, and
Hmm.
she was always about the bottom line. It's like how is this going to generate revenue for
Mm,
is this just something fun you're doing? Because
mm.
I don't understand how this is actually going to make us any money. But she was smart. Besides the whole stock thing, the her going to jail for a little bit.
Yeah. Which is
She was
before you got to working for her.
it was right before she had just
Yeah.
got out. Yeah.
Okay.
Because she actually couldn't have a lot of involvement legally with the company at that time.
I
Like
remember
she
that.
needed to be,
Yeah.
she was like on
Yeah.
the board, but she couldn't
Right.
manage the company.
Mm.
But then I was there when that transition happened. So
Oh, interesting.
after her probation was up, she ended up joining the company again. But yeah, just watching her in meetings was amazing. Like I
Mm.
was fortunate enough to be able to sit in a couple of meetings with her over my time there, and also she was really good to the employees. Like she would throw these parties and like sponsored parties by like Hendrick's Gin. I remember having a party on a rooftop where we played croquet and we're playing Nintendo 64, and they were like specialty cocktails that were being made, but the party
Mm.
had no purpose. It was just
Mm.
like
Mm.
just a
Yeah.
party just to say
The employee
I
appreciation kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
like there were
Yeah.
no pizza parties. It wasn't like
Yeah.
Domino's like sitting in a room or all party
Right.
hats on. It was like this was her appreciation party,
Yeah.
a rooftop party, beautiful weather overlooking the
Well, it's
Hudson River.
Martha. I mean, she kind of
You
has
gotta
a
do it up.
reputation to uphold, right?
Exactly.
Can't have a couple of boxes of
Exactly.
dumb, especially in today's age of social media. That was back in the day, but now like someone would certainly tweet it. So you got to be careful.
Yeah.
Well, TJ, this has been great. Really interesting. Really appreciate your time. Where can people go to learn more about you and learn more about Southleft?
Sure. Southleft.com. That's Southleft.com. You can get all of the information about the types of services that we provide, and you can see some of the case studies for some of the projects that we've worked on. We do mainly front-end web application design and development. So we like to focus on what your problems are and seeing if we can solve them with our digital services.
All right, TJ, thanks so much.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.